Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now this is the third video we've made featuring 2017's $3,000 Titan V, but I just couldn't move on without comparing it to the legendary GTX 1080 Ti. The Titan V has 12 gigs of HBM2 memory and was marketed toward professional use cases like machine learning and AI applications. That doesn't mean it wasn't a gaming beast, so if you wanted the absolute best and had deep pockets, then the gold Titan V here may have been right up your street. The 1080 Ti on the other hand sold for $700, over $2k less than the Titan V. This was more than enough for most people, and when it came to gaming, well, there's a reason it's still regarded by some as the GOAT. These days there is less than $100 or pounds between these two on the used market, and in some cases on eBay UK these two are very closely priced. There isn't much gaming data from 2017 in terms of comparisons, but one site said that the Titan offered 20% higher frame rates on average. But what about these days? How do these two compare? I've put some side-by-side gameplay on screen as well as frame rate numbers. The figures were taken from two identical custom benchmark runs which won't necessarily reflect the actual gameplay footage that you're seeing. I've tested both cards at 1440p today. The Titan V comes in just one variant, the gold Nvidia reference model. And the 1080 Ti is the Asus ROG Strix OC version, probably one of the best GTX 1080 Ti's out there, so just how close will this be? We will start with Baldur's Gate 3. Of course we are using 1440p throughout today. We're using the high preset here and TAA. Now I tried to stay away from any upscaling in this one, so no FSR or XESS. The Titan V managed 97 FPS overall with a 1% low of 76 and a 0.1% low of 59. The GTX 1080 Ti, the flagship Ti card from 2017, hit 78 frames per second with a 1% low of 66 and a 0.1% low of 59. So the 0.1% low was the same, and in fact the 1080 Ti gameplay felt a little more consistent. There were fewer dips and drops, but it will perform with about 20 frames per second lower on average. As you can see, both of these cards are using around 250 watts of power, though the 1080 Ti is running cooler thanks to the, well, cooler. For Red Dead Redemption 2 we're using the ultra textures and everything else set to medium with TAA medium as well. The level of detail sliders, so grass and geometry, were both maxed out, and any on-off toggle was set to on, apart from reflection MSAA, which was turned off. Now with the Titan V, during our little walk or ride through Valentine here, we were looking at plus 80 frames per second, well 81 frames per second, well above 60 FPS anyway, so 81 was the average, the 1% low was 68 and the 0.1% low was 64. This was really rather consistent here, and I made sure that async compute was enabled here from within the Red Dead Redemption 2 game files, as this can perform better with some cards when it's enabled and others will benefit from it being switched off. By comparison, the 1080 Ti also delivered very respectable frame rates at 1440p resolution. It's another plus 60 FPS result here, 68 overall. For Oblivion Remastered, well, as we know, this is a very intensive game, and so we've had to stick to the low preset here at 1440p. This one would certainly benefit from 1080p resolution, but I wanted to stick with the same resolution throughout here. We're using high textures and high reflections just to make that water look a bit better, and we also have TSR enabled for 45 frames per second on the Titan graphics card, a 1% low of 37 and a 0.1% low of 10, so definitely problematic in some areas here. The 1080 Ti actually performed a bit more consistently. The average was of course lower by about 8 frames per second. We're looking at 37 this time around. The 1% low was 28, but the 0.1% low was 21, so it certainly felt smoother to play on this card, even if our average wasn't as good. Sometimes though, consistency is more important than a high average, but as expected overall, the Titan V will come out on top when it comes to overall performance. One of my favourites of 2025 next, I believe, is Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Here with the medium preset and SMAA2TX enabled, we saw 85 frames per second from the Titan V with a 1% low of 75 and a 0.1% low of 72. Here we're just taking a walk through one of the opening towns here. Pretty easy to run this game on a wide range of hardware. I think it's really well optimized. This is something we discovered when I tested it upon release with a few lower end cards and integrated graphics as well. So on these two old beasts, yeah, it's not going to pose a problem even at this higher resolution. Even the 1080 Ti was able to manage plus 60 FPS at 2560 by 1440, though it did see a few dips and drops below this here and there as reflected by those percentile lows of 59 and 56, but it was still very smooth overall, and honestly, I can't complain. If you're buying a 1080 Ti in 2026, very early 2026, it's still surprisingly capable, though if the price difference is minimal, you may want to consider the Titan V instead, because that is still very impressive. GTA 5 Enhanced Edition next. We don't get access to the ray tracing options here, and this is something we will expand on a little later on. So GTA 5 Enhanced with the high settings and TAA, basically everything was turned up as high as it could go, bar RT options, which just don't exist for this card, either of them. We saw 118 FPS for the Titan, a 1% low of 91 and a 0.1% low of 60. So it wasn't exactly perfect here, but we were seeing well over 100 FPS a lot of the time. The 1080 Ti also managed to achieve an average of over 100 frames per second, 103 to be exact, with a 1% low of 81 and a 0.1% low of 77. So a higher 0.1% figure here meant that overall this felt a little smoother to play, if I'm being honest. If I didn't have that frame time graph enabled, then I would assume that the 1080 Ti was doing a little better because of how much more consistent it was. Not sure why, maybe this just doesn't agree with the HBM2 memory, the high bandwidth memory. The 1080 Ti of course utilising GDDR5X. Plus perhaps it's just the fact that this was always geared more towards gaming from the start, as opposed to professional applications. Now I want to finalise with Cyberpunk 2077 here with the high preset, high textures and high crowds. The Titan V managed 71 FPS on average, 1% low of 56 and a 0.1% low of 43. When it comes to the 1080 Ti, again, this was a lot smoother in terms of those percentile lows, but it was let down a little bit by the average, which came back at 52, so almost 20 FPS lower here using the GTX card. But again, a very respectable result from this old flagship. I want to briefly mention ray tracing as well, because we can enable it using the Titan V. We have access to the RT options like RT Ultra and RT Overdrive, so we get path tracing as well. And this is something we tested in the previous video. Whether or not this will always be an option or whether it will be sort of locked out in driver updates, I don't know, or driver security updates as we don't get any more game ready drivers, or game updates, I have no idea. But with the Titan V we can enable ray tracing, and with RT Ultra with XeSS 2.0 performance at 1440p, we still saw at least 30 frames per second. There is, however, a reason I'm not throwing up side-by-side comparisons for this one, and that's because the 1080 Ti did not let us access those RT options in this one. We were limited to Ultra as the highest possible preset, but not RT Ultra. We couldn't enable them here. Not sure whether or not I was just experiencing a glitch this time around, because I'm pretty sure we've done it before and I've seen other videos too of the 1080 Ti running ray tracing, but I don't know. All I know is the Titan V managed it here and the 1080 Ti didn't. Now overall, when it comes to performance, the Titan V managed an overall average of 83 frames per second and the 1080 Ti 68. This means that there is approximately 22% difference between these two cards, at least in terms of an average FPS figure here. So this is of course in favour of the Titan V, and I think this is what I mentioned at the start in terms of differences back in 2017 from the few results that I saw as well. So interesting to know that there is still this much of a difference between the two. That's not to say the 1080 Ti isn't still a very capable choice, but if prices are close and you're thinking about one of these old beasts, then the Titan V is worth it if it doesn't cost too much more. If it's sort of 50 quid, $50 more, then I think you'd have to consider it. But if your budget is tight, you can't afford the extra, then it doesn't matter, because the 1080 Ti is still going to provide you with a solid gaming experience. And if you want to play at 1080p instead, so you want to drop things a little, then it's going to be even better. Both of these have held up incredibly well though. Thank you very much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already and you want to, of course, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next one.